This conference will now be recorded.
Good day. Hi. Thanks for attending our virtual toolbox talk. And today I'm going to talk to you here about emergency preparedness. But first, I should introduce myself. My name is Hannah Canning, and I am a safety advisor here with the Newfoundland Labrador Construction Safety Association. All right, let's get into it, guys. So when we're thinking about kind of emergency preparedness and things like that, the first thing we have to have an understanding is, well, what actually is an emergency? So when we think of an emergency, this is what will be called or is defined as unforeseen combination of circumstances or the resulting state that calls for immediate action, and also an urgent need for immediate or for assistance or relief. Okay. Next, the other thing we want to think about when we're thinking about emergency preparedness is also the type of work that we're involved in. So employers have an overall responsibility to assess where there is a need to rescue or evacuate personnel, but they also have to think about the type of work that they're involved in, such as high-risk work. So for example, if you're working at heights, or if you're working near power lines, or where there's risk of entrapment or in a confined space, so on and so forth, then your employer has a responsibility to have appropriate procedures in place for rescue and evacuation. The other thing you want to think about, well, is whether or not you're working alone or in isolation. So when we think about this and what the legislation defines, working alone or in isolation is working in circumstances where emergency assistance is not readily available in the event of an injury or incident. So if you are not properly prepared, then of course it's time to conduct an assessment and take the necessary action to ensure your safety. So when we think about working alone or in isolation, we have to think, well, has there been discussion? Has our procedures in place to establish predetermined check-in times? Are you also in a situation where you potentially can't get any cell reception, so maybe you need to have satellite phones, but also thinking about things such as like the location of where you are in the route to the nearest hospital. So are you in a more isolated area? Is it good to have that map to have an understanding of where your nearest assistance will be located? The other thing we have to think about, well, what supplies and our equipment are readily available? So everyone has to have easy access to a well-stocked first aid kit and other emergency supplies and equipment based on the type of work and the associated hazards. So you would have to think, well, what sort of additional items will I need in the event of an emergency? So thinking about like the types of fire extinguishers, but also the type of fire extinguishers that you would need. Do you need flashlights, an alarm, a tripod, stretchers? Like what sort of things do you need? Additionally, we also have to think about additional training. So when we think of it, the law dictates that when you have between 2 and 14 people, you need at least one person with emergency first aid. If you participate in the CORE program, CORE requires you to have that 2-day standard first aid. So you have to have an understanding of, well, who has this training, as well as what equipment will we be using in the event of an emergency. So for example, if I'm working at height, are we using a descent control device or pole rescue kit or what have you? What are we using to assist in the event of emergency? And have I actually had some practice with this? Have we trained ourselves on it? Have we set it up? Have we been inspecting it? And then also thinking about in-house training, rescue equipment, and emergency response plan. So also thinking about other equipment and supplies you may be using and thinking about, how you use them, inspect and maintain them. And also thinking about your emergency response plans, such as, the location of our muster areas, our nearest exits, and our emergency routes and contact information and things of that nature. Another thing to really think about, especially when you think about changing environments and stuff like that, and if we think about the construction industry, I mean, your environment is constantly changing. You could be at one work site one day and then the following day or another, or there could be environmental changes. But what you have to think about is if there is a change in conditions or any other environmental type things, ask yourself, will this have adverse or bad effects on me? Or will it increase the potential for emergency situation? If so, we have to take some time to step back and reassess. So we have to think, do we have suitable plans in place? Um, has this change in circumstances affected my current emergency response plan or the type of work? So once again, it's good just to step back and reassess, reevaluate. Other than that, that's just a few things to think about when you're thinking about emergency response planning and whether or not you are prepared. So, with that, if you are unsure, then, engage your right to know and participate by asking questions and helping come up with solutions and all that kind of fun stuff. If you have any further questions or concerns, please drop us a line at the NLCSA. Our website is nlcsa.com, and you will find our contact information there, as well as some further resources. Thank you for your time, and have a good day.